So we are on to the last game of day one by Magnus Carlsen, and he doesn't get the easiest of opponents. With only 2 out of 4, he gets Grandmaster Andrew Tang. Now Tang is only rated 2281 in Rapid, but that is because he hasn't played many Rapid events in his chess career. So only rated, 2281. But most people know Andrew Tang as PenguinGM, building up to the status of being an online legend. One of the best online players in the faster time controls and bullet and hyperbullet, especially hyperbullet. And he's played many games with Magnus Carlsen on lead chess. But this is the real deal. This is the World Rapid Championship, so there will be no mouse tricks in this one. So let's see what Andrew has up his sleeves. He opens with d4. Magnus with black plays d5. No shenanigans in this one. And bishop to f4. We're going to have the London system. Knight to f6. e3. Some standard moves here. Black challenges the bishop with bishop to d6. And now knight b to d2 by Andrew. It's more common to play bishop to g3 here, and lure black into taking on g3 with the bishop. When you take with the h pawn, and you improve your pawn structure. But with knight b to d2, you give black the option of taking on f4, which Carlsen didn't do, and you get this pawn structure, which has its pros and cons. I know that the legendary Akiba Rubinstein liked to play positions like this with white, and it seems like Carlsen didn't want to allow this, and he played b6. So bishop to d3, keeping on allowing black to take on f4, but having not done so on the move before, black is unlikely to do it now. So he castles, knight to e5. So a very compact development by white. I mean, he gets his bishop out, and there's his knight here. This knight is out, and he's ready to castle. Very quick development. And after c5, he goes queen f3, very aggressive. So he wants to use the positioning of this bishop on this diagonal. Maybe put the queen here. And in some cases you can get really aggressive. You can play g4, maybe castle queenside, and just throw everything at your opponent. After queen c7, we have c3, fortifying d4, also giving the bishop a square on c2. But Carlsen goes bishop a6. And this more or less forces white to take. I mean, you could go maybe bishop here, but then you're giving black a really nice diagonal. You can't castle anymore on the king side. And Andrew preferred to take on a6. Knight takes a6. So black gets a good exchange, because we do have a lot of white pawns on dark squares, which means that the light squares could be weakened with removing the light square bishops. But on the other hand, we did sacrifice some time putting this knight on a6. So let's see what happens. Pros and cons for both sides. Castles, queen to b7. And this is aimed against white pushing his pawn to e4. And knight g4 now, initiating some trades. And it looks like this position doesn't have a lot of life. We have exchanged one pair of bishops and one pair of knights. And not a lot of dynamics in the position, but Andrew finds a nice way to activate his knight. He plays knight to c4, utilizing the pin here. This pawn is pinned, it can't capture the knight. Bishop to e7, and now knight to e5. Carlsen immediately pushes the knight away with f6, and again the knight uses the pin and goes back to c4. So clever little maneuver, but maybe it didn't accomplish much, because, well, white played knight c4, e5, back to c4, back to d2. And meanwhile, black got in the moves f6 and queen back to d7. So yeah, perhaps now black is ready for active operations in the center, and indeed we see that now with e5, a tactical move. We see bishop g3 by Andrew, but of course the tactical justification is takes when we introduce the pin on the bishop and we win a piece. So therefore the bishop retreats, ct, ed, and now e4. So now we have some imbalance in the position. Carlsen has got this pawn, and you know, once he pushes f5, he's got a kingside pawn majority and he can go for a kingside attack, and that's indeed what he does. After queen e2, hitting the knight gets back into the game on c7, f3, and now f5. Okay, fortifying the pawns, which you want to do, but you do give up the e5 square, but that's only temporary because we can immediately contest it with bishop to d6. If white were to fortify the bishop, we are giving black a protected pass pawn, and seems like Andrew didn't fancy that and he took on d6. Queen takes, f takes e4, and d takes e4. So it seems like Carlsen is intent on using his now big kingside pawn majority 4 against 2 to mount an attack. Knight c4 hitting the queen gets out of the way, knight to e5, and now knight d5. A well-placed knight, and white's problem is that if you push, you know, c4 attacking the knight, you are considerably weakening your central pawn structure, especially the pawn on d4, and black wouldn't mind that. So Andrew tries a4, but simply a5 by Carlsen, enticing white to make a move, which was rook a to e1. And I think Carlsen can claim some superiority here. His knight here is much more influential. They both have like a nice centralized knight, but this one, the black one, it's influencing some nice squares here. It can't really be pushed away because there are too many weaknesses, and we can immediately go into b4 maybe, along with the weakness of the d4 pawn. And the knight on d5, it's going to help the dangerous pawns on f5 and e4. But first, a prophylactic move, king to h8, queen f2, and now rook to f6. And now we see definite aggressive attentions by Carlsen. After queen g3, rook a to f8. It seems like we're getting ready for some aggressive pawn pushes here by black. Queen h4, and first queen to e8. Just covering some squares, not allowing any knight checks in case we move this rook. Of course, with the queen pinning the pawn. Rook to a1. This pawn was also attacked, so white has to defend it. Very passive. And now black is pushing f4. And things seems to be getting pretty difficult for white. Rook a to e1. Now if you take here, white will take this one. So rook to h5, kicking the queen, kicking the knight, and after knight to e5, another very nice exchange sacrifice. We already saw it in round 4 against Vladislav, where he sacrificed the rook for a knight and a pawn. In that game it was an endgame and he got a really nice pass pawn, but in this one, I mean, he's just getting such a nice attack. Nicely placed knight, a good placed queen, a rook, and these pawns are just, you know, devastating. Rook to d1, f3. And this means that black is ready to push e3 and e2, forking the rooks, winning material. Andrew tried to play queen to g3, but now knight to f4, threatening to win the queen with a royal fork. So rook d to e1 prevents that. Actually prevents that drastically, because if you go here, I take, and you get back rank made it. But of course Carlsen saw that and he played queen to c5 check, and this means now if you move your king, it seems to me I can take on g2 with check, or maybe just take on knight, yeah, with a knight. yeah, maybe just take with a knight and everything falls apart. Having said that, you know, maybe there's rook takes e4 here. So I'm wondering what happens after king h1, which he didn't play. He played queen f2, but king h1. I want to take, but queen takes utilizes the pin. So there must be something stronger here for black. Never mind, I'm a complete idiot. Of course I take on d2. Because queen takes, I'm actually covering the rook with my queen, which I somehow missed. So yeah, completely winning. And after queen c5 check, we had queen f2 by Andrew. And after f takes g2, resignation. The rook is hit and there's no way to save it. You can take on c5, but this is check. And whichever way you take, I will play b takes c5 next move. And be up a piece and a pawn. So yeah, nice 3 wins in a row after a rough start. So, you know, still some chances for Magnus, but of course with the 2 first round losses, he hasn't faced any top opposition and his tiebreak is going to be horrendous, but he's still in the tournament. So 5 rounds done, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.